Rain poured down in thin, steady lines as Elena Warren hurried through the parking lot, clutching a prescription slip to her chest. The wind tugged at her coat, and the pharmacy's glass doors slid open with a soft hiss, letting her escape the cold. Inside, it smelled faintly of antiseptic and paper. She wiped a drop of rain from the corner of the paper and walked toward the counter, smiling politely at the man in the white coat. "Hi," she said, her voice calm but tired. "I need this filled, please." The pharmacist took the paper, adjusting his glasses. He looked at it once, then again, his expression tightening. "Who's the prescribing doctor?" he asked, his tone suddenly cautious. "Dr. Mercer," Elena replied. "He's my physician at Greenwood Clinic." The man's brows knit together. He glanced at the computer, then back at her. "I'm sorry, ma'am. There must be some mistake. Dr. Mercer's license was revoked 6 months ago. He's not allowed to issue prescriptions." Elena blinked. "That can't be right," she said, forcing a small laugh. "I just saw him yesterday. He's still working." "I was in his office." But the pharmacist only shook his head. "I don't know what to tell you, miss. His name's flagged in the system. He's not a practicing doctor anymore." Elena stood there frozen. Her heart started to race. "There must be another Dr. Mercer," she said weakly. "The one I see is in Greenwood Plaza." He hesitated, then slowly shook his head. "That's the one." A strange pressure built in Elena's chest. She thanked him quietly and walked out, her mind spinning. The rain had grown heavier, washing across the sidewalk in glimmering sheets. She got into her car, her fingers trembling as she held the prescription. Dr. Mercer's neat handwriting filled the page, his usual calm blue ink, his signature at the bottom. Everything looked normal, but it wasn't. The thought wouldn't stop looping in her mind. License revoked. 6 months ago. She had seen him yesterday. He had sat across from her, looked her in the eyes, and told her not to worry. He had smiled the same gentle smile he always did. "You're getting better," he'd said. "Just follow this dose carefully." Had that all been a lie? Elena drove home through the rain, her headlights blurring against the slick pavement. She told herself she'd call the clinic tomorrow, that there had to be an explanation. Maybe the pharmacist was mistaken. Maybe there was a technical issue. But deep down, she knew something didn't add up. When she reached her apartment, she tossed her bag on the couch and stared at the prescription again. Dr. Mercer had always been her anchor. After her accident last year, when she'd fractured her ribs and couldn't sleep from the pain, he'd been the only one who listened. Other doctors brushed her off, saying her anxiety made her symptoms worse. But Mercer, he'd believed her. He'd prescribed her medications that eased the pain and helped her breathe again. He'd been kind, patient, too patient. Maybe not now, as she sat on her couch with thunder rumbling in the distance. A thin sense of fear crept into her chest. She grabbed her phone and searched his name online. Within seconds, there it was, his photo, the same calm face she knew so well. Underneath, a headline: Dr. Samuel Mercer, medical license revoked after ethics investigation. Her breath caught. She clicked on the article, her pulse rising with every line. The board had stripped his license for conducting unauthorized research, falsifying patient reports, and distributing unapproved medication during experimental treatments. It didn't make sense. Unauthorized research, unapproved drugs. Her eyes flicked to the date 6 months ago. Around that time, she had been hospitalized for an allergic reaction. The doctors said it was from a new pain medication Mercer had prescribed. He'd visited her in the hospital and told her it was a rare side effect, nothing more. She had believed him. Now, her stomach twisted. What if that reaction hadn't been an accident? She tried to breathe, but her chest felt tight. For the first time, she replayed the details of her last visit with him, the way he'd avoided direct eye contact when she asked if her medication was safe, the way he'd closed his office door quietly, as if trying not to be overheard. Her thoughts spiraled faster. If he wasn't licensed anymore, then what exactly was he doing? Was he still treating patients? And why had his office still been open? Elena grabbed her keys and stood up so quickly she almost tripped over the rug. The clock read 8:47 p.m., but she didn't care. She needed to see that clinic with her own eyes. The drive back to Greenwood Plaza took 15 minutes. The building was a small strip mall with a dentist's office, a florist, and a neon sign that still read, Dr. Mercer Family Practice. But the parking lot was empty and the lights inside were off. Elena stepped out of her car, her heart pounding in her throat. Rain dripped from the edge of her coat as she pressed her face against the glass door. Inside, the waiting room was dark magazines still neatly stacked, chairs in perfect rows. It looked like it had been frozen in time. She turned to leave, but as she walked past the side of the building, she noticed a faint light glowing behind one of the curtained windows. It flickered, like a lamp being switched on and off. She followed the glow around the corner, to where a narrow alley led to a basement entrance. The door was slightly open. Her pulse quickened. She hesitated, listening. A faint hum came from below machinery, maybe a refrigerator or medical equipment. Carefully, she crouched near the small basement window and peered inside. Her breath caught. There he was, Dr. Mercer, sitting at a desk cluttered with vials, charts, and boxes of medicine. He looked focused, scribbling notes on a clipboard, his expression calm, almost satisfied. Behind him, a table held sealed containers marked with patient ID codes. Eleanor's stomach churned. He was still practicing, still running something. She backed away, stepping on a loose rock that scraped against the ground. The sound was sharp, echoing against the wall. Mercer's head snapped up instantly. His eyes met hers through the glass. For a split second, they just stared at each other, his expression blank, hers frozen in shock. Then she turned and ran. The rain hit her face like cold needles as she sprinted to her car, fumbling with the keys. She jumped in, slammed the door shut, and locked it. Her breathing came in short gasps. Through the windshield, she saw the basement light turn off. He knew she'd seen him. She drove off without looking back, her mind a blur. Her fingers shook as she gripped the steering wheel, and by the time she reached home, she could barely catch her breath. She double-locked the door, turned off the lights, and sat in silence. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You shouldn't have come back, Elena. She stared at the screen, the words blurring. A chill ran down her spine. How did he know? How did he even have her number? She tried to steady her breathing, telling herself it was a coincidence, that maybe it wasn't him. But deep down, she knew. The calm, controlled tone of that message felt exactly like him. The man who had once told her not to worry. The man who had smiled while lying to her face. Elena didn't sleep that night. She sat on the couch, staring at the prescription on the table, the blue ink glistening faintly under the lamp. The trust she once had in Dr. Mercer, the quiet belief that he had her best interests at heart, crumbled completely by morning, exhaustion mixed with anger. She wasn't sure what she felt more, fear or betrayal. He had lied to her, used her, maybe even risked her life. But now she knew something he didn't. She had seen the truth. She spent the morning combing through her drawers, searching for every document she had, prescriptions, receipts, insurance papers. As she gathered them, she noticed something strange. The serial numbers on the prescription bottles didn't match any of the official records on her insurance portal. They were off by 1 or 2 digits each time, like someone had intentionally altered them. Her hands trembled as she typed the numbers into an online database for medication tracking. The results came back blank, no match found. The drugs he had given her weren't registered under any approved name. Her stomach dropped. He wasn't just practicing illegally. He was experimenting. The rain outside had slowed to a drizzle, but inside her apartment, the storm had only just begun. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same truth. Dr. Mercer was continuing his work in secret, and she had been one of his subjects. Elena sank into her chair, clutching the papers to her chest. The fear was still there, but beneath it, something else was growing: determination. She had trusted him once. He had taken advantage of that, but now she would find out why. She didn't know how yet. But one thing was clear: she wasn't just a patient anymore. She was a witness, and she wasn't going to let him get away with it. The rain began again, soft and steady against the windows, as Elena made her first real decision since everything fell apart. She wasn't going to hide. She was going to find the truth and make him face it. And for the first time that night, she didn't feel afraid. She felt awake. The morning after seeing Dr. Mercer in that basement, Elena Warren sat at her kitchen table surrounded by papers. Her eyes raw from lack of sleep. Empty coffee cups lined the counter. Every time she blinked, she saw his face. The cold look when their eyes met through that window. He wasn't supposed to be there. He wasn't supposed to be practicing medicine. Yet there he was, working in secret, surrounded by boxes of drugs. Her hands shook as she opened her laptop. She started digging. Every file, every email, every message she'd ever exchanged with him. She checked her medical records, payment history, appointment logs, everything. And the deeper she went, the stranger it got. Some receipts were missing. Others had been edited. And the phone number listed for the clinic now went straight to voicemail. Something inside her snapped. Fear turned into anger. He had lied, manipulated, and used her trust. She remembered the hospital stay after the reaction. He had visited her then, calm as ever, saying, "You're lucky we caught it early." He'd smiled, almost proud. She had believed him, even thanked him. But now, that smile looked different in her memory, almost rehearsed. Elena needed answers. She called the medical board. After a long hold, an officer confirmed Dr. Mercer's license had been revoked for ethical violations and experimental drug use. "If he's still seeing patients," the woman said firmly, "that's illegal. You should not have contact with him." Elena thanked her, though her pulse was hammering. She hung up and stared at the phone. Not have contact. The words made her feel powerless. Mercer had stolen her control once. She wasn't going to let him do it again. That night, she drove back to Greenwood Plaza. The clinic was still dark, but she parked a block away and watched from her car. Around midnight, the same basement light flicked on again. He was there, moving around, carrying boxes. She saw a shadow of another person, a woman, maybe, standing beside him. They were speaking, but she couldn't hear. Elena grabbed her phone and snapped a few photos, zooming in as much as she could. Then she noticed something else, an old security camera above the side door. The red light blinking. He was recording his own operations. She thought of calling the police right then, but something stopped her. If she did, they might just shut it down quietly. Mercer had influence, money, and charm. He'd find a way out. No. She needed evidence, proof strong enough to expose him completely. The next day, she went to her old hospital and requested her medical file. The nurse hesitated but printed it. When Elena flipped through the pages, her throat tightened. One document stood out, an authorization form she didn't remember signing. It gave permission for extended use of trial medication under supervision of Dr. Mercer. Her signature was there, but it wasn't hers. Someone had forged it. Her legs felt weak. He had used her identity to continue his experiments, to make it look like she had volunteered. And she wasn't alone. She recognized a few other names listed in small print patients she'd met in his waiting room. She searched them online. One had passed away 6 months ago from unknown causes. Another had filed a complaint that went nowhere. Each case was quietly dismissed or closed. Mercer's pattern was clear. By evening, Elena was shaking not from fear, but fury. She'd been a name in his files, a test subject. Her pain, her trust, it had all been part of his data. That night, she printed everything she had found: news articles, forged documents, prescription labels, her hospital discharge notes, and pinned them to her wall. It looked like a crime board from a detective show, but it was all real. Every line connected back to Mercer. She decided to visit one of the names on her list: Thomas Gray, a patient who had mentioned the same medication during a waiting room chat months ago. She tracked down an address from public records and drove there the next morning. Thomas answered the door in a wheelchair, his face pale and drawn. When she introduced herself, his eyes widened with recognition. "You saw Dr. Mercer too?" he asked quietly. Elena nodded. "I think he used us," she said. "He's still working somewhere." "I saw him." Thomas's expression darkened. "I thought I was the only one," he said. "He told me he was testing a new nerve medication, something that would help me walk again. I trusted him." He rolled back slightly, his voice shaking. "After the 3rd dose, I couldn't move my legs anymore. The hospital said it was irreversible nerve damage." Eleanor's throat tightened. She sat with him for over an hour, listening to how Mercer had promised miracles and delivered pain instead. When she left, she knew there was no going back. Mercer wasn't just breaking the law, he was destroying lives. Over the next few days, Elena built her plan. She would gather enough evidence to expose him publicly. She started recording everything: calls, conversations, even her visits to his clinic at night. She wrote notes, timestamps, and saved them in a hidden folder. Then one evening, as she returned home, she found an envelope slipped under her door. No return address. Inside was a single photo of her, sitting in her car outside Mercer's clinic, camera in hand. On the back, a message written in the same blue ink Mercer always used. "You don't know what you're getting into." Her stomach dropped. He was watching her. For the first time, true fear returned. She double-checked her locks, unplugged her phone, and turned off the lights. She sat by the window, staring out at the street, waiting for movement. But the night stayed still. Only the street lamp flickered outside, throwing long shadows across the floor. The next morning, she didn't go to work. She went straight to a private investigator she found online, a former police officer named Lydia Tran. Elena explained everything, showed her the files and the photo. Lydia listened silently, then said, "If this is true, he's committing serious crimes. But you're in danger. He knows you're onto him." Elena nodded. "Then let's make sure he can't stop me." They worked together over the next week. Lydia tracked down addresses, financial records, and medical supply shipments. She found evidence Mercer had been ordering restricted chemicals using fake business names. Some of the shipments were traced to that same clinic basement. Each new discovery made Elena's anger grow. She wasn't just chasing revenge anymore, she was chasing justice. Still, deep inside, she wondered what drove him. He wasn't an evil man when she first met him. He'd cared, or at least pretended to. So why go this far? One night, unable to sleep, she rewatched an old voicemail he'd left months ago. His voice was calm and kind, telling her to stay strong and trust the process. Hearing it now made her skin crawl. How many others had he said that to? A few days later, Lydia called. "We've got something," she said. "He's transferring large sums of money to an overseas account. Probably the payment for his data. If we can catch him during a handoff, it's over." Elena felt her heart jolt. "When?" "Tomorrow night," Lydia said. "He's meeting someone at the clinic. Midnight." Elena agreed instantly. But when the time came, Lydia didn't show up. Elena waited in her car near the alley, camera ready, nerves trembling. Midnight passed. Then she saw Mercer's shadow in the window again, this time with a tall man beside him. They exchanged a briefcase. Elena snapped photo after photo, but then the tall man turned, scanning the parking lot. She ducked, holding her breath. The man walked outside, his phone glowing in his hand. She thought he was leaving, but then her car door handle rattled. Her heart stopped. She hit the lock button again, and the man tapped on the window, peering inside. "Get out," he said calmly through the glass. Panic surged through her. She started the car, swerving backward, tires splashing through puddles. The man shouted something, but she didn't stop. She drove until she saw the lights of the highway and didn't slow down until she reached home. Her hands were still shaking when she checked her phone. A text came through from Lydia finally. "Sorry, my car broke down. Are you safe?" Elena didn't reply. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were red, her hair a mess, but there was something new in her face fire. She'd seen too much to back off now. She uploaded the photos to a cloud drive along with all the files she'd collected. Then she typed a note. "If anything happens to me, this goes to the authorities." She sent copies to Lydia, the medical board, and an investigative journalist. As she hit send, the clock struck 3 a.m. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Her revenge wasn't complete, but it had started. Mercer had taken her trust, her health, and her peace. Now, she was taking his secrets. The next morning, the first article appeared online. "Disgraced doctor tied to illegal medical experiments." Mercer's photo flashed on the screen, the same calm face that once made her feel safe. She closed her laptop and leaned back, her hands trembling, but this time it wasn't from fear. For the first time in a long while, she felt control returning. The story wasn't over, but now the truth was moving faster than he could stop it. And Elena knew one thing for certain. She wasn't his victim anymore. She was the storm that was coming for him. The news spread faster than Elena expected. By morning, headlines had flooded the internet. Revoked doctor linked to illegal drug trials. Patients expose secret medical experiments. And whistleblower evidence points to Greenwood Plaza. Her phone buzzed non-stop calls from journalists. Messages from people claiming to be former patients. And even warnings from blocked numbers telling her to stay quiet. Elena ignored them all. She sat by the window, clutching her coffee, staring at the grey sky. For months, she had been silent, scared, manipulated. But not anymore. She had exposed him. Dr. Samuel Mercer's spotless reputation was ruined. Yet deep down, she knew it wasn't over. Mercer wasn't the kind of man to disappear quietly. That afternoon, a police car stopped outside her building. 2 detectives came to her door, one tall, serious, the other younger, calm but curious. They thanked her for coming forward and asked about the evidence she had submitted. She handed them copies of everything: emails, photos, fake prescriptions, and forged forms. They promised to take it seriously. As they left, the younger detective turned and said softly, "Be careful, Ms. Warren. People like Mercer don't go down without a fight." She nodded, though her stomach twisted. She didn't want a fight, she wanted peace. But peace felt impossible now. That night, she got another message. No name, just a short text. Meet me where it started. Tonight. Alone. Her first instinct was to delete it, but curiosity clawed at her. Where it started could only mean one place: Mercer's old clinic. She should have told the police. She should have ignored it. But she needed to see him face to face, to understand why he had done it. The roads were slick from another evening storm. When she arrived at Greenwood Plaza, the neon sign was dark. The parking lot was empty except for one car, his. The same black sedan she remembered from before. Elena parked a few spaces away, her heart thudding hard. She stepped out, the cold air biting her skin. As she approached the clinic's back entrance, she noticed the door was already open, just a crack. A faint light glowed inside. "Dr. Mercer?" she called softly. No answer. She stepped inside. The hall smelled faintly of disinfectant and dampness. Her footsteps echoed against the tile. She moved toward the basement, the same place she had seen him working before. The air grew colder. At the bottom of the stairs, she found him. Dr. Mercer stood by a metal table covered in papers and vials. He looked thinner than before, his lab coat wrinkled, his eyes tired but still sharp. When he saw her, he smiled faintly. "Elena," he said, as if greeting an old friend. "I was wondering when you'd come." She stared at him. "You texted me." He nodded. "I needed to see you one last time." She crossed her arms. "You needed to see the person who exposed you." He sighed and sat down. "You think I'm a monster. I understand that. But what you don't see is why I did it. The trials, the research, it wasn't greed. It was hope. Real medicine takes years, decades. Bureaucracy kills progress. I was trying to save lives faster." Elena shook her head, anger building. "You poisoned people. You forged my name. You lied." "I helped you," he said calmly. "You were in pain when you came to me. Others turned you away. I gave you relief." Her voice rose. "Relief that almost killed me. You used me for data." Mercer's eyes darkened. "You call it using. I call it advancing science. Every breakthrough comes with risk. You just happen to be part of that process." Elena took a step back. "You played God. And now people are suffering because of you." He tilted his head slightly. "You think I'm the only one doing this? Half the industry works behind closed doors. I just stopped pretending." She stared at him, realizing there was no guilt in his eyes. Only pride. That was the part that terrified her most, not what he'd done, but how justified he felt doing it. "I came here to tell you it's over," she said coldly. "The police have everything. The files, the payments, the lab shipments. They'll find you soon." Mercer's smile didn't fade. "You're smart, Elena. I always admired that about you. But you've made enemies, now powerful ones. You think you've exposed me, but you've only exposed them." "What are you talking about?" she asked. He picked up a folder from the table and handed it to her. Inside were letters, research contracts, and bank transfers from pharmaceutical companies. Real ones. Big names. It was evidence that his work wasn't entirely independent. He had been funded, quietly supported, until things went wrong. "They'll protect themselves," he said softly. "And they'll make sure you disappear if you keep digging." Eleanor's hands trembled as she looked at the papers. It was bigger than she thought. Mercer wasn't just a rogue doctor. He was part of something deeper. She snapped the folder shut. "Then I'll expose them too." He laughed quietly. "You're brave. But bravery doesn't win wars, it buries heroes." Something in his tone chilled her. She realized then that Mercer wasn't trying to scare her. He was warning her. "I'm not afraid of you," she said. He looked at her sadly. You should be. Suddenly, the sound of tires screeching outside broke the silence. Blue and red lights flashed through the window. Police sirens wailed, growing louder. Mercer looked toward the door, his jaw tightening. They found you, Elena said. He gave her one last look, calm, almost resigned. I told you, Elena. The system protects itself. Before she could respond, he grabbed a small flash drive from the desk and pocketed it. Then he turned toward the side door, moving quickly. Stop! Elena shouted, running after him. But by the time she reached the door, he was gone, vanished into the rain and flashing lights. Police officers rushed in seconds later, weapons drawn, shouting for her to get down. She raised her hands, heart racing, shouting. He went that way. But Mercer had disappeared into the night. Hours later, after endless questioning, she sat in a sterile police station, her hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee. The detectives told her they'd raided the clinic, seized all the materials, and confirmed the illegal trials. But Mercer was nowhere to be found. They promised they'd catch him. But Elena had seen his eyes calm, certain, untouchable. She wasn't sure they ever would. Days turned into weeks. The media frenzy quieted. The world moved on, but Elena couldn't. Every shadow reminded her of him. Every ring of her phone made her heart skip. Then one morning, a package arrived at her doorstep. No return address. Inside was a single envelope. She opened it carefully, her breath shallow. Inside was the flash drive Mercer had taken, and a handwritten note. You were right, Elena. The truth deserves light. Use it wisely. She plugged the drive into her computer. Files opened, thousands of them. Research data, correspondence, private memos between pharmaceutical executives and regulators. Proof of corruption that went far beyond Mercer. Her hands trembled. She could turn it in. She could end this once and for all. But she hesitated. What if he was right? What if the people behind him were even worse? For hours, she sat there, torn between fear and resolve. Finally, she took a deep breath and copied everything to multiple drives. Then she sent it anonymously to a group of journalists known for exposing corruption. She hit send, her heart steady. That evening, the first leaks went public. It was chaos news anchors reporting, government agencies launching investigations, companies denying involvement. Mercer's name resurfaced again, but this time not as a villain alone, but as a key to something larger. Elena didn't step into the spotlight. She stayed quiet, letting the truth speak for itself. But deep inside, a storm still raged. She had won, in a way, but victory didn't feel like peace. Weeks later, as she walked along the river at sunset, she thought about everything she'd lost. Trust, safety, sleep. For the first time, she didn't feel powerless. She had faced a man who thought he was untouchable and survived. She stopped at the railing, the wind brushing her hair. Somewhere out there, Mercer was still alive. She didn't know where, and maybe she didn't want to. Part of her hoped he'd vanished forever. Another part knew he was watching, waiting to see what she'd do next. She whispered into the wind, "It's over." But even as she said it, she knew the truth. Some endings don't come clean. Some stories never fully close. When she turned to leave, her phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. "Good work, Elena. The world needed you to finish what I started." No name. But she didn't need one. She knew that voice, that confidence. Mercer was out there, still in the shadows. Elena smiled faintly, not from fear, but from understanding. She had spent months chasing revenge, trying to destroy the man who hurt her. In the end, she realized something deeper. Revenge hadn't healed her, it had changed her. It had made her strong, cautious, awake. The fight had taken everything, but it had also given her clarity. Justice wasn't about punishment, it was about truth. And the truth was finally free. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elena walked away from the river, her silhouette fading into the light. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The past was behind her now. And though the world would never be the same, she had found her peace, not in revenge, but in the quiet certainty that she had done what was right.